can I play you some of the new things I've been doing, which I think could be commercial?
Hi, I'm Brian, and welcome to part 3 in the Robert Fripp MOR Trilogy series that I've been doing on YouTube of late. This was a trilogy which was supposedly put together by Robert Fripp, which I think he embraced, could have been apocryphal at the start, I'm not too sure, in which he would record and play on and produce 3 albums between 1970 and 1980 to try and get a more radio-friendly sort of sound going on. And the first one was to be Daryl Hall's Sacred Songs, and there's a review, my review, you see the link down below. The second was to be Peter Gabriel's second album, the Scratch album, and the third was supposed to be his uber work, his masterpiece, and that was his album Exposure. But things went slightly wrong like they're going here right now. And Daryl Hall's record company wouldn't allow the release of this. They thought it might harm his radio-friendly exposure, the radio-friendly exposure. And so what actually ended up happening was that this album came out first in 1978, if I'm right on that, Peter Gabriel's second album. Then in 1979, Exposure came out, and then 1980, Daryl Hall's Sacred Songs came out, which is kind of cool. Well, at least they all got out. That's what I'm saying. At least they all got out. So what are we doing? Today we're looking at Robert Fripp's Exposure album. And I love this cover. I like in the background how we've got this sort of surveillance footage or surveillance shot from a police camera or something like that in an interview room with this big eye, this huge big eye with a sense of a tear coming out and the pressure that's involved in that. And there's Robert in the black and white, and he's got his hands in his pockets, which is not a great look, but still. And that idea of surveillance or trouble or police is sort of reinforced, or spies. It's James Bond, perhaps. Anyway, there's Robert Fripp there. And this is interesting because this tells us that it was a club edition album record that I've got, and which is kind of interesting. Here's the inner sleeve. Pretty flimsy, but it's got all the lyrics and everything we probably need there. And there's Robert in colour there, hands in pockets again. And I believe it says on the cover that these photographs were taken by Chris Stein, and I'm assuming that's Chris Stein from Blondie. But another really interesting thing about this club edition is there's been a mispress. So I don't know if you can see that, but this is side 1. And then we flip it over to side 2. But it's exactly the same. It's side 1 again. So the label's being copied or reproduced there. There we go. The lyrics were mainly penned by Joanna Walton, who was Robert Fripp's partner at the time. And she was the person who coined the term Frippatronics, giving that sense of gravitas to his noodling, if you will, with delays and echoes. But there's also a cast of thousands on this album. I mean, apart from Fripp, we've got Daryl Hall, Peter Gabriel, we've got Brian Eno, we've got Pete Hammill, Terre Roche, Narada Michael Walden. Mrs. Fripp turns up for a play, Fripp's mother, I think. And did I mention, of course, if it's an album that came out in the 70s or early 80s and it needed a session man to give it some grunt, then we've got to have Tony Levin, who's probably becoming my favorite bass player at this stage. He's incredible. So after all of the hullabaloo, just how good is this album, and why is Robert Fripp's MOR Trilogy not often spoken about? Well, let's see if we can get some answers and find out.
Actually, I won't start like that, sorry. And again. 3, 4.
The album proper kicks off with You Burn Me Up, I'm a Cigarette, and what a punny title that is. And this is kind of recalling the collaborations between Daryl Hall and Robert Fripp. I want to call him Robert Oates all the time. Daryl Hall and Robert Oates, but I can't. It's not fair. Anyway, so it recalls the collaborations from Sacred Songs. And this song, You Burn Me Up, I'm a Cigarette, does sound a hell of a lot, or has that same sort of feel as Sacred Songs from the album Sacred Songs. In that it's a homage to those 1950s, 1960s 12-bar blues kind of stompers. But, you know, why would you do this song if you're going for a middle-of-the-road idea? I mean, it's not on the middle of the road. It's outside looking in. It's not a million miles away from the middle of the road. But I don't know, in this sort of... I don't know, why would you waste your time on this sort of thing? Anyway, I do quite like the spoken section with Shiva Puri Baba in the middle, so let's have a listen to that.
Think of God alone. Dismiss every other thought from your mind. You will see God.
Breathless is up next, and this is an instrumental which is straight out of the old King Crimson playbook. What song does this remind me of? I keep thinking I've heard it before, but maybe it's just from this album. You know, something from Red, second side of Starless and Bible Black. One of those songs they played at Daryl's house. It's certainly a juxtaposition from You Burn Me Up, I'm a Cigarette. One's, you know, very dispensable, and the other's basically high art. I love that gnarly guitar tone that Robert Fripp's got going, and Tony Levin's bass is so fat. It is badass stuff. The drum rolls by Narada Michael Walden are a price of admission on their own. This is a fantastic song which definitely makes a statement, and it's got a whole bunch of key changes in it, which you know I don't like, but they usually work, but they work well here. So why don't we check out a section from the end? Now that's what I want on a Robert Fripp album. Next song up is called Disengage, and this features Pete Hammill on vocals from Van de Graaff Generator, and also Mrs. Edith Fripp. Mrs. Edith Fripp. That's not easy to say. Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp. Come on, join me along. Edith Fripp, Edith Fripp. Anyway, it's got that Hendrixian 7 sharp 9 chord going on. You know the one, the Purple Haze chord. It's going on all the way throughout this song, which really gives it that sort of sense of disengagement and aggression and mania. And Pete Hammill sounds like an absolute madman as he goes throughout. And this song is utter chaos. Lyrics like, Mrs. Marion is strict with her servant. Behind locked doors, over coffee they speak. They speak to my sister, my parents, and I'm trying hard not to shriek. Disengage! It also features Barry Andrews from Barry Andrews from XTC and Shriekback on the organ and the keyboards, and Phil Collins on drums. But it's sort of undercut a little bit because Robert Fripp's just about to go into this, or he's in the start of a great solo full of sound and fury, and then it just sort of fades out. I think he's trying to just make sure he doesn't get too far away from the road, but he's probably getting to the point where he's going to have to yell pretty loudly to be heard by anybody standing in the middle of the road at this point. The next song up is called North Star, and here is that delightful radio-friendly MOR song that I was looking for and hoping for a little when I first listened to this album. It has a really Albatross feel to it, you know, like Peter Green's Fleetwood Mac Albatross. And there's also a sense of the Sun King from the Beatles and the second side of Abbey Road here. Eno's on synth, but I can't really tell the difference, but it's certainly, I can't tell his presence, but it sort of has that floating, drifting sound of an albatross. If that's what these predators do with these amazing wingspans, they probably don't have that floating, drifting sound going. They're probably going quack, quack, or something like that. But anyway, I'm probably talking about the Fleetwood Mac song. Daryl has the vocals here, and he does a remarkable job, particularly given the brevity and at times the lack of assistance from the lyrics. But that's a challenge in itself. Dare I say it, I hate to say this in a sense, but this number one middle of the road song from this album is probably the song that I like the most. So that's cool. It's probably my favorite.
How filled, now time, now touch, how sweet, how near, how filled, my time still, I'm still tonight, North Star, we stand, how far, how clear.
Chicago is the next song. Pete Hammill is on lead vocals, and he's really pulling out all stops on this to make it into a memorable and great song. I don't know if it's there, but anyway, it's still pretty cool. But there's a quick fade out to this song, and it's almost like there's a sense that Robert Fripp has paid his MORs. He's stumped up for his MOR dues, and now he wants to move on. But there's some really cool Frippatronics which are played over the final voice, and as we go out, it's a highlight. So let's check it out. But that mood is very quickly shifted with NY3. It has a really, again, a chaotic feel to it and a lot more of that 7#9 chord. So this is moving us not out of sight of the road, but we're starting to think about how good's our battery on our mobile phone going. Got to love the lead guitar playing under the riff and under the vocals. And Narada Michael Walden on drums is just an incredible weapon when the intensity has to be brought up. The lyrics are about domestic violence, and there's some really terrible language in there. There's a sense that at this point, Eno Walton's doing that Brechtian idea of not just holding up a mirror to society, but smashing the mirror as we go. It's a song which stays with you in a sense, but maybe not for all the right reasons, or maybe they are all the right reasons. Side 1 ends with Mary, which is a beautiful song, and we have delicate crystalline guitar tones to support Terre Roche as she sings throughout the song. Well, not all the way. I'll get to that in a moment. She's giving me a real Joni Mitchell vibe here, and it sounds fantastic. And those guitars, which underpin everything, are just beautiful. And there are Frippatronics as well. But then in the middle of the song, something weird happens. Terre Roche stops singing and Daryl Hall takes over, and that's really kind of cool. This is a serious piece of arrangement and production. I love it. And again, it features very, very quickly, which makes me feel that these creatures are not of this earth, yet are still upon it. Let's have a listen to that swap between the singers.
Except perhaps for Mary, and she was always my sister.
A creature could be so lonely, it became my deepest wish to give her my love.
Side 2 opens with Exposure, which of course we're well familiar with because it was on the second album of the MOR Trilogy, Peter Gabriel's Scratch album, and it features a very sinewy bass line, as we know, Frippatronics, but the added delight here is this really crazed female vocal by Terre Roche, which reminds me a hell of a lot of Björk. Oh, Björk reminds me of Terre Roche here, with that real cathartic sort of shrieking which is going on. And I wonder how much Björk was familiar with this when she started recording. And where is this song also in relation to Talking Heads' Remain in Light? It's another time. I should get $1 every time I mention that song. I'd be a wealthy man. But particularly songs on the second side. The spoken section is really interesting because it says,
it is impossible to achieve the aim without suffering. It is impossible to achieve the aim without suffering.
it is impossible to achieve the aim without suffering. I wonder if that has to do with the MOR trilogy here. I prefer this version to the one on Peter Gabriel's album. If for nothing else, it's got a better drum sound. And this now takes us on to Häaden Two. Häaden idea, I'm not too sure, but you can forget the radio-friendly idea. This is straight out of the King Crimson Dissonant Playbook. Even has this soundbite.
An incredibly dismal, pathetic chord sequence.
And if I was going to describe this dissonance metaphorically, I would say this is like playing snakes and ladders, except there are no ladders. You've got to climb snakes throughout and you keep slipping down. But finally, after hours of work, you get up to the top and you're expecting to see perhaps a ladder. But what you see is this mouth of a snake, and out of it comes this person holding a ladder and just belts you on the head until you go all the way down to the bottom and you've got to start again. Sort of like a Sisyphean myth or something like that. Next up is the song even has Graham Chapman doing Monty Python in reverse. How cool is that? I think it's cool. I haven't looked at the coolometer today, but I think the coolometer would say it's pretty cool. Which then goes on to, we now move on to Urban Landscapes, which was on Sacred Songs by Daryl Hall and Robert Fripp, and it's Frippatronics all the way. It's gorgeous, it's sublime. Next song after that is I May Not Have Had Enough of Me, But I've Had Enough of You. I may not have had enough of me, but I've had enough of you. And this is Mania. It's got Pete Hammill and Terre Roche singing again. This is definitely for the King Crimson fans. It is totally bizarre. Very much of the cut from the same cloth as NYCNY on Sacred Songs, including that beautiful section in the middle. But I prefer Daryl's voice version, particularly because of that section. I love it. I'm not sure what radio station would ever play this song, and I'm also not sure that I'd want to be hearing it 24/7. It's that kind of song. Then we rock into the first inaugural address to the I.A.C.E. at Sherborne House. This is J.G. Bennett, an academic, talking about Gurdjieff, and it's only 7 seconds long, so blink, and you do miss it. And then we move into the next song, which is Water Music 1. There's been some water imagery throughout this album, which is going to get a lot stronger coming up very, very soon. And this is, again, John G. Bennett talking about climate change and climate disaster. Frippatronics are used here, which work absolutely beautifully. And right towards the end of this song, or is it the start of the next song, we have this lovely piano sound, which really is magnificent. And that segues us into the next song. But let's just have a clip of that piano playing over the Frippatronics. And as is a tradition established somewhere, some way, we do need an epic to finish off an album, but we're not actually finishing off the album because something comes after this. But what we've got is Here Comes the Flood. It's Peter Gabriel front and center here, and this is a song that was initially released on his Car album, his debut album. But I think I've heard that Peter Gabriel wasn't totally enamored with that version, and so he wanted to record it again. And this is a total dream version of a classic song. Check out the original. It's sublime. It's beautiful, it's atmospheric, it's powerful, it's personal, all those words. Let's have a listen to it.
When the flood calls, you have no home, you have no walls. In the thunder crash, you're 1,000 miles within a flash. Don't be afraid to cry out what you see. The actor's gone, there's only you and me. And if we break before the dawn, we'll use up what we used to be.
And then we do come to, in a sense, the end of the album with Water Music 2, which has some of the most intoxicating and atmospheric Frippatronics that I have absolutely ever heard. And it totally justifies its place to sort of bring us back down to earth after Here Comes the Flood. Or maybe it's that moment when the oceans finally cover up the earth and peace is restored. That's a bleak future, but there's also some beauty to it as well. After that, we get the Postscript. And this is 40 seconds of spoken word with Fripp and some sound effects. And here's one of them.
So the whole story is completely untrue. A big hoax.
Now that's interesting, particularly when we're given that laughter at the end, which kind of reminds me of the laughter between Indoor Games and Happy Families off Lizard, which is probably my favorite side of King Crimson. And interestingly enough, I didn't talk about it at the beginning of the video, but there's a phone that rings during the preface, and here at the postscript, the phone is put down to signify the end of this album. So now we've reached the end. I guess the question has to be asked, was Robert Fripp's MOR Trilogy a success? Well, commercially, no. None of these albums spent prolonged periods on top of the charts. And did they get any more radio play? I'm not sure. But on the other hand, linguistically, what am I saying? Artistically, how are you today? Testically. Artistically, I have to say they were. I mean, this is a really cool album. I really like it a lot. I'm saying really a lot as if to try and convince myself, but it is a cool album. And I think what's interesting is that Robert Fripp talked about how being constrained to the 3 to 4 minute time length on songs really created a sense of discipline and the need for discipline, which is interestingly enough the next album that King Crimson would come out. This one, of course, it was artistically successful. And for me personally, it was an album that has enabled me to get into Peter Gabriel just a little bit. As the door is open, but I'm pulling it apart, and one day I'll be all the way in, which I just didn't get into him before that. And of course, Daryl Hall was able to show that there was a real serious side to him as well, and that he was just not commercial fodder. And I really like that and respect him very much for that. So I'm really thrilled with my exploration into these albums, and it's given me a lot of pleasure over the last two months or so to listen to them, and reminding you that if music of any size, shape, sound, or sacred songs, exposure, scratch gives you pleasure, then who am I to argue with your opinion? If you'd like to watch and interact a little bit more with my album reviews and interact with me in the comments, that would be great. They're just over there. And until next time, I hope you're doing really well, staying cool. Bye now.